for joining us at New Direction Family Law. My name is Sarah Hink. I'm one of the attorneys and partners here. Next to me is Elizabeth Stephenson. She's also the other attorney and partner at New Direction Family Law.
Yeah, hi everyone. Welcome.
Yes, welcome. Hope you're doing well. We thought since school's about to start that we should do a live video about how school relates to separation and issues of custody and child support, and how changes in school can affect your lives and how separating can affect children in their schooling. So Elizabeth, what are some typical family law issues that pop up in regards to school that you run into?
Oh, it's so funny because I just had a case last week where the judge made his ruling based on where the child went to school. And what he said was, if the parties lived closer together, I would have done joint custody, which I thought was pretty profound. It's been a long time since I've heard that. And so making those choices and being mindful of that, I think, is important. Mm-hmm. That it's not just about who's the better parent or who's been the primary parent, but judges really take like the whole child into perspective, including where they go to school. So that was really a good point for me to remember and help with my clients.
And that's probably important because we understand that children, they have friends and they have the same teachers and they have the same schools that they're used to.
That's right.
And removing them from that location and the people that they know and they're used to and familiar with is just another huge change on top of a family separating. So how much can you keep stable for the child as opposed to taking them out of school and putting them in a whole new environment.
Exactly. So how about you? Anything that's popped up over summer is always interesting in school.
And I think a lot of times when you meet with families who are separating and the children are not yet in school, you need to take that into consideration for the future. And you say, okay, is this custody schedule that you have come up with going to work when the child enters kindergarten and first grade?
Right.
Because it might work now, but it might not work when they're going to school. And who's going to pick them up and drop them off?
Right.
And whose address is going to be used for the school district?
Yeah, and you have to think, a lot of times, it's like me, I'm on what we call a 5-2-2 schedule with my ex and my son, and so there are some transitions during the week, and some kids do great with that, and some kids don't do so great with that.
Right.
So a lot of times, if you have a joint custody schedule, think about, is my kid an easy transition kid, and should I just drop them off on Monday, do a week to week, so there's only that one.
Right.
But then you got to remember, but then there's a whole week of schoolwork that I'm not involved in. So you got to bring the teachers in, you got to work with the other parents. So co-parenting when kids get in school is really, really important.
Right, that's a good point, because oftentimes in trials we bring up school records.
That's right.
And you can see perhaps when a child is with one parent, for the majority of the time their grades are down, as opposed to when they're with another parent, the grades reflect something different.
Right.
So is it one parent that's taking more time to invest in the child's schooling and sit down with homework?
Right.
So you really got to look at that because it might come up in the future.
Right, and that's a really good. That leads me to something else. Is that a lot of times if we're doing custody, there are certain things that you have to talk about: health, education, welfare, school, religion, day in the life, that sort of thing. And so a lot of times we unfortunately have to bring in teachers or subpoena them or get their school records. And so how do you go about doing that, and why is that important if you're having to go and litigate some things?
Well, first you typically start with a subpoena to the school system, and there are different procedures for that, and school systems are different what they want you to do and who to direct the subpoena to. And a lot of times teachers do not want to get involved, but they will send the records, the school will, so you can look at the grades, progress reports, attendance records, which is big too, and make sure
absolutely. Make sure they're getting there on time and able to.
Yes, and if the child's being held out, then that's not good, and obviously judges are going to take that into consideration with custody.
Right, which I think is all, a lot of times when you're going through separation divorce, you're overwhelmed with a lot of things. So it's not only taking care of yourself, but making sure that you're present and accounted for and do those sorts of things for your child, not to look good in court per se at all, but just because it's important to build that relationship with your child and make sure that they're successful in their lives and that sort of thing.
And to invest with their schooling and invest in their homework and get to know their teachers.
Exactly.
Make sure you know the teachers' names and you follow up on any emails and correspondence you receive from them, and really take the time to be a part of your child's life in that environment, in the educational environment.
Right, and a lot of times when there's physical custody and there's legal custody. So if you have joint custody, and even if somebody has primary custody, the other parent always has the ability to get those records, to go to school, to meet the teachers, to get on the email list. So I always advise clients not to sit back and wait for the other parent to do it, because one, it's not their responsibility, it's yours. But to be proactive and go out there and meet the teachers and make sure you're on the school list and make sure you're on Power School and all those sorts of
Meet
things.
some of the other parents.
That's
There might be
right.
some out there with similar situations like yours that are divorced and separated, and
Right,
you can kind of get to know them and see how they operate.
exactly.
So what happens if you're not happy with your child's school? Say you're in the same school district in Wake County, but your residence is to one school and the other parents is to another school, and you think yours is better. What do you do then?
Well, you can file a motion to modify custody. But, so a lot of times, Wake County has the report cards where you can look and see which school is quote unquote better or not. But I think there are other things that judges especially take into consideration, which is the environment, the classes, the diversity, how well that child's doing in school. So they may not be getting A's on the Wake County report card, but it's still a good school and the child is thriving there. So those are things that you need to think about. But if you really do think that the child's school needs to be changed, you can go through the school system, but if you have joint custody, those are decisions that you have to make together. Right, and so that gets difficult sometimes, and sometimes if you can't do that, then the first step is, one, talk to an attorney to see what your options are, but two, there's always mediation to see if you can sit down and work that out.
Right.
Because if not, you're gonna go in front of a judge, and neither one of you are gonna have a say-so at that point.
And if you can't work together in that front, then you might have other issues
You
you can't
got
resolve.
bigger problems.
And you might even go see a co-parenting therapist to help you two work together and make
That's right.
big decisions that affect your child's life.
That's right, because it's not just school, but it could be healthcare or, whatever that
Sports,
may be. Right,
what they do after school.
right,
Maybe you want to pick up the child after school and spend more time with him, but the other parent wants him to go play football.
right.
And how do you resolve those
Well,
differences? So
right.
there's lots there.
And it's not really, and a lot of times, what I'm seeing a lot of times now is it's, preschool is becoming more important because parents place a lot of emphasis on education. So one parent may be a stay-at-home mom and not working during the day, but the other parent needs the work-related childcare. But they use it for child development and socialization skills and that kind of thing. So one parent can go and pick them up at 9, but the other parent's working. So then it kind of becomes a problem. So I think even not just school, but preschool, parents have to think about those sorts of things.
Certainly,
too.
that's come up in a lot of my cases where one parent puts more importance on preschool and pre-K than the other parent, and it's exactly for that reason.
Right.
Someone who has more time, while the other parent does think that it's important for the child to interact with their children
Right.
and have that learning educational environment.
Right. So let's talk about private school for a bit. Does that come into play at all, or how does that work?
It does. So it's either you're making the decision to move the child from public school to private school,
Right.
or the child's always been in public
Private school.
and then one parent wants to move the child to private school.
Right.
So this can come in play in custody, but it also comes up a lot in child support.
That's right.
Because as we know, private school can be very expensive.
Right. So how does that play in? Can that be a part of, like for example, let's take that when they were together and the household was running and they had 2 incomes in one household, we could afford private school.
Right.
And now they're in 7th grade and they've been in this private school and they're thriving and they're doing great. So how does that, now we've separated and I really can't afford this. What happens?
Well, a lot of times the judges will want the child to stay in private
school.
So
That's
if
right.
you were able to afford it then as a unit, then
Right.
both parents should be able to somehow have the funds to come together and pay for the private school.
So if one parent pays and the other one can't, how does that work?
It can be factored into the child support and used as an extraordinary expense.
Right.
If that you enter the pattern that the child is used to the private school. So it's a little different if the child's always been in public school
Right.
and one parent all of a sudden wants to move him or her to private school and the money's not there.
Right.
The money's not there.
It's
to
just
do
not
so.
there.
It's not there.
And the other issue is, you may want your child to go to private school because it's nice, but there has to be on the worksheet for child support, there really has to be a educational issue about it if they haven't been there before or for
Right.
a long time. That it has to be, you have to be putting that child in private school to advance their education, or they have some disability or something that particular school can address. So those are all issues too that I think that parents need to sort of keep in mind.
Keep in
when
mind,
they do that.
and their finances and their budget,
Right,
and always be considering that when in your child's education.
right.
And speaking of education, a college education. Is that something that we should even be thinking about during these years?
Yes, they should, and the courts can't order that, but parents can, if they're in a separation agreement or doing a consent order, can say each of us are going to pay a portion of the college expenses. And a lot of times what you hear is one parent wants that and the other parent says, well, I'm going to do that, so I'm not going to, I don't need to sign anything to do
Right.
that. And so at that point, you have to make a decision, because the law is no judge can make that other parent pay for college.
Right.
And so sometimes it's just a burden that one parent has to assume, because the court can't help them in that respect.
That's true, and also I think people need to take into consideration, well, of course I'm going to pay for the college education. Right. I want to, right now I'm able to, but you might not be able to in 10 years.
That's
Things
right.
can change.
That's
so
right, because you may get remarried and have 5 more kids. Who knows?
Right, or you may lose your job, and
that's right.
Something can change, and you cannot fulfill that contract obligation before. So think before you obligate yourself to do something
right.
so substantial in 10, 15 years down the line.
Right, and that just makes me think, people say to me all the time, well, I had a friend who got divorced and they did this and they did that, and what people have to remember is your situation is completely unique. That your friend may have been, y'all may be best friends, live next door to each other, but your circumstances are completely your personal and individual to you, and that's why it's important to really talk, whether it's me or Sarah, it doesn't matter, but go see an attorney and just sit down with them and say, here's what I'm going through, here are my issues, here's what I've thought about, help me sort of walk through and think about these sorts of things. And whether you hire an attorney or you don't, at least go talk to someone, because we always love to say knowledge is power, and we are always happy to sit down with folks and talk to them about their situation and say, here are your options. You don't have to take our advice, you don't have to do what we say, but at least you leave us in this office going, having options and knowing what your rights are.
Yes, and you have power. You have power in knowing your options.
Right.
That what's happening right now isn't going to be forever.
Right.
And you need to make decisions that are going to be good decisions for your future going forward.
Right.
And that will affect you positive in the future.
Right.
And the same for your children when it comes to their schools.
Right. I think another big issue with school a lot of times is when you have disabilities, whether you're on the autism spectrum or have autism or you're ADHD. My son is ADHD and he's on meds, and one parent may not want him on meds, one parent may say all he needs is this or that. And so, unfortunately, sometimes you have to have a judge step in, or a mediator step in, or an arbitrator step in to help you figure those things out. So when you sit down with us or sit down with someone, make sure that you sort of let everybody know and tell us everything that's going on, so that we can help you and give you the best advice that we can in that respect.
Right, because you might think you're stuck in a situation that might not be the case.
Right.
There are options to help you and someone to have your back in the decisions that you want to make for your child, and it's something that we can listen to you and make sure that we can get what's best for you and your child.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've been doing these Facebook lives on court, which we love to do because as we say, knowledge is power. And so we sort of go on, all right, the school's starting, we're going to do this. But we'd really love to hear from folks who are watching, or who your friends are, or who might be going through separation and divorce, to let us know what sort of things and questions that you have that we can help answer for you in a way to help you sort of go through this transition and this process. So if you want to do that, can they let us know? How would they do that?
They can send us a message on Facebook or leave a comment on this post. And we'd love to hear from you and know what topic you'd like to hear next from us.
That would be great. We know we're coming up into the holidays.
Yes.
Which is always a sort of like school. Anything that's a transition period, I think, is sort of hard sometimes for parents.
Yeah, and of course, first day of school is special for parents, and you want to send your kid off, but of course, the other parent also wants to be part of that day.
Right.
Same with the holidays.
Right. So and here's just my little 2 cents worth today. It's like if this is your child, especially if it's kindergarten or first grade, and it's your custodial day, open up and send a text, send an email tonight, or pick up the phone and call the other parent and say, hey, would you like to join us? I think it would be really meaningful for for our son, for our daughter, for you to be there. And it's 10 minutes, 5 minutes of your time that you can model great behavior and show your child that you still love them and you're still a unit, even though you still live in 2 separate houses. So I know it's difficult.
It's a good note to start the school year on,
Absolutely,
for sure.
absolutely, absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us today, everyone. And like I said, if you had any questions about today's topic, or you request a topic for us to discuss some other time, please reach out in this post. And once again, I'm Sarah Hink and Elizabeth Stephenson of New Direction Family Law.
Thanks,
Have a good
guys.
evening.